It's a struggle to get by in Singapore.
So the Prime Minister gave his National Day rally on Sunday night. He made a few policy proposals, some of which are good for the people, and the SDP welcomes it. In fact, a couple of these policies were proposed by the SDP years ago. But more about that in another video. For now, what I'm concerned about is this. I didn't hear anything about how he was going to tackle the two biggest problems that Singaporeans are most concerned about. One, bringing down the cost of living, and two, cutting down the influx of foreigners and improving our labor productivity. And if you think that I'm making these problems up, I want you to listen to this. When he was alive, Lee Kuan Yew said, "We've grown in the last 5 years by just importing labor. Now the people feel uncomfortable. There are too many foreigners. Trains are overcrowded with foreigners, buses too. Property prices have gone up because foreigners with PR visas are buying into the market." The answer is simple. We check the flow of foreigners, raise your productivity, do the job better, so that instead of 2 workers, eventually you'll do it with 1 worker. Now, there's a lot to unpack from this statement. First, Mr. Lee said, we've grown in the last 5 years by just importing labor. Folks, don't be fooled by the facade that you see around you. Our economic growth has grown like what Mr. Lee said, by bringing in foreigners and foreign capital. And cheap foreign labor has resulted in businesses not pushing for more productive ways to achieve growth. Remember, as Mr. Lee Hsien Loong pointed out, productivity growth is the only way forward to ensure a better life. Next, let's deal with property prices. Property prices have gone up, Lee Kuan Yew said, because foreigners with PRs are buying into the market. 2 things happen when PRs buy up property here. The first is that they make owning a private property out of reach for many Singaporeans. And some of the wealthy PRs buy them up in bulk. They don't just buy 1 or 2 units, they buy up entire estates. The second problem is that when wealthy PRs buy up commercial property at high levels, rent for businesses go up, pushing up the cost of living for all of us. Now, how expensive has Singapore become? Well, recently, a bid for a hawker center stall reached more than $10,000. HDB resale prices have reached insane levels, the latest one exchanging hands for more than $1.7 million. Singapore has become so expensive that MNCs are increasingly moving out of Singapore to cut costs. Our very own UOB announced it will move a big part of its operations to Malaysia. And how is all this affecting the people?
There are a lot of Singaporeans that are basically struggling.
It's a struggle to get by in Singapore.
For someone who's maybe having $2,000-$3,000, your rental is going to cost like $1,000. That's like crazy. Like 30% just goes to rental. It's crazy.
Feel like very stressful. Need to work more job.
Are you worried about high prices increasing even more in the future? And have you ever considered moving somewhere cheaper to live?
Yes, of course. I think that's what most Singaporeans really think, whether really we can survive this very high cost of rising.
If you ask them if they want to move out or not, I think definitely a lot of people want to move out of Singapore.
I'm worried that by the time I'm old enough to settle down or buy my own house, it will be much more than what it's costing now.
There was a jump in working Singaporeans having to take up loans to cope with the high cost of living here. Younger Singaporeans are not spared. More and more of them are seeking help with debt. As Prime Minister, Mr. Wong now draws a salary of nearly $200,000 a month. Yes, you read it right, $200K a month. With that kind of opulence, does he know the struggles you are going through? If he did, would the PAPF increase the GST, bus fares, water prices, gas and electricity rates, university and dormitory fees, healthcare costs, town council service and conservancy charges, and HDB refuse collection fees? So what can we do to check the rising cost of living and raise productivity? Well, according to Mr. Lee, the answer is simple. We check the flow of foreigners, raise your productivity, do the job better so that instead of 2 workers, eventually you'll do it with 1 worker. And what did Lawrence Wong say about this in his National Day rally? Are the younger PAP leaders ignoring what Lee Kuan Yew advocated? That is to check the inflow of foreigners and raise productivity? No, it is not enough to make warm, fuzzy pronouncements. And let me tell you why. Way back in 2003, Mr. Lee Hsien Loong promised that the government would carefully manage the inflow of foreign workers and ensure that they complement rather than displace Singaporean workers. That was 20 years ago. Now, this graph shows the number of foreigners in Singapore since the year 2000. No more nice-sounding promises like the flows of foreigners will be controlled. Singaporeans need to know specifically how the government is going to reduce the influx of foreigners and by how much. 5, 10, 20% annually? And we also need to know how the government is going to improve productivity aside from making motherhood statements like we must transform our economy. Now, the PAP has been saying this for the past few decades with little to show for it. We need PM Wong to spell out explicitly and concretely how the PAP is going to reduce the cost of living for our families, how it is going to make housing prices affordable for the younger generation, and how to get rid of unfair competition for our jobs. If you find this informative and helpful, please make sure you share this video and tap on the follow button. Until my next video, take care. I'll talk to you again.